Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Christine Williams.
You're listening to the midweek version of Fiber Talk, that twice-weekly podcast for people who stab ground cloth.
Or make art.
Okay, fine. Go ahead.
I'm in an arty mood today.
All right. Good for you. Good for you. I've juggled 100 things a minute all day long. I'm stabbing.
So I've had to take a ferry to work for a bunch of times the past couple of weeks. And depending on how badly the ferry is rolling, I've been able to... Yeah. And it's a big ferry. Like, this is a ferry that fits probably 100 cars or so. So it's not like a little tiny boat or anything. So it's a great place to stitch, actually. So it's been really nice to actually sit and stitch because there's no Wi-Fi.
Oh,
which is the best thing ever.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
take the toy away and things get done. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Now, all right. Now, dumb guy question here: do you get to sit in your car, or do you have to get out of the car on the ferry?
Well, you can do either. So depending on what I choose to do, if I drive over, I have the option to sit in my car, or I can sit in a booth or a chair or whatever. If I just am a walk-on, then I just go into the ferry cabin and can sit in the cabin, and then I, go, get to my place of business in another way. But in the nice weather, you can actually sit on the top of the ferry where it's just sunshine, where you actually get really good light. This is not that time of year. So, but the light at the window is usually pretty good. So you can sit in your car. So you can climb into the back seat, and you can have your light set up, and you could have everything you wanted set up there.
Excellent.
You could actually have a whole stitching station set up there if you wanted to. But really, the issue becomes less about that than, for me, I tend to be a little bit prone to motion. Well, all right, let's be honest. I tend to be very prone to motion sickness. So I have to be careful about what I choose to do on the ferry when it's not a very steady sea. So what I'm trying to do is, I have this one project I've been working on for, honestly, a year and a half, and I just want to finish it. And I don't even like it anymore, but I just want to finish it because I feel like it's one that
I don't even like it anymore.
I don't because it's something I chose to do when my skills were very much beginner skills. It's the front surface of a pillow, and it's crewel, but not like nice Jacobean crewel where it's, finely done in its particular style. It's literally just, lazy daisy stitches and satin stitches and just a good way to learn something.
Uh-huh.
And really, once it's a pillow, it's going to be a terrible pillow because it's not going to stand up to anything, and you won't be able to wash it. It's the most impractical thing I've ever seen, sort of looking at it now, but I have to finish it. So, and it's a good thing to travel with because I don't care if it gets beaten on, and it's small enough that it's pillow size, so I can travel with it. So that's my
the
travel
project.
piece. That's the travel piece for the moment. But what I would really like to do is to get back into stump work, because stump work lends itself to smaller pieces. So I would very much like to do that.
Oh, yeah, you could sit there and stitch little leaves and things. Yeah.
Yes. But then that would mean I would probably have about 6 whips going, and I don't know if I want to go into that level of crazy town.
Yes. Okay, so I geography, I don't know my Long Island geography. Are you on a river on this ferry, in the Sound? What are you?
Yeah, so I take the ferry from Long Island to Connecticut, right across the Long Island Sound. So there's 2 ferries. There's one that goes from the very, very tip of Long Island out to the eastern part of Connecticut. And then there's one that's kind of in the middle that just goes right across the Sound, and that's the one that I take. So most of the time it's fairly calm. But every once in a while you get one that is pretty rough. So this was one that they said anybody that has a motorcycle, you need to stay with your motorcycle because it's probably going to fall over.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
Yeah. Which was a good sort of lesson for me to be careful about checking not only rain forecast but wind forecast.
Yes.
When I think about taking my motorcycle over to Connecticut, because I don't want to. Well, I don't mind the rain so much, but having to handle a bike on roiling.
I was going to say on a rolling ship. Yeah, that'd just be great.
I don't know that, I'm not a big person. So I don't know how well that would go.
Hey, what fun though to ride your motorcycle to the ferry and then ride it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely. And literally so for me, the actual drive time is about 20 minutes because it's all ferry time.
Oh.
So it's an easy ride. But if the sea is rough, it's not. The ride part is the easy part. It's the sitting still part that's going to be a problem. So.
Hey, not a bad way to commute though, by golly.
No, it's very civilized. It's very civilized because many people where I live commute to Manhattan on the Long Island Railroad, and
that can't be pretty. That cannot be pretty.
So from most of the people that commute in live much closer to the city. So where they get on to the train, it's very crowded. You can't do a lot because you're just looking for a seat. You're lucky if you get a seat. It's crowded. Then you get to the city. Then you have to get a subway. You are taking multiple modes of transportation. It's just a slog to get in, and then you have to walk to wherever you go. So it's very expensive, very, very expensive. This is not inexpensive, but it's less. But it's just a very civilized thing because the ferry is not crowded. You either drive your car in or you just walk on, and you can get a snack, you can get a cocktail. You can sit on the top of the ferry in the sunshine in the summertime. It's very quiet. It's lovely. There's no, you don't have to get off there and then go find a subway. It's just extremely civilized.
Oh, man. I'd get a lot of naps in, I can tell right now. Mm-hmm.
Many people do that. Many people hop on and immediately fall asleep.
Yep. That would be me.
Yeah.
Wake me up when we hit the shore.
Yeah. Some people work. Some people just chat. Lots of people, but there's quite a few people that commute that way. So I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's how it is. So, but it's a good place to stitch. So there you go.
Well, all right. Well, now I have a picture of you in the morning when I walk from bedroom to the bedroom next door, which we now call an office. Now I know what you're doing. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, sorry. Vanna. 2 Needle Chicks, it's Peggy and Denise, just for the record. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Just helping Vanna out there. Okay, Debbie Rowley. Let's see. First, thanks to Arlene last week for filling in for Christine.
Yes.
Much appreciated. Debbie Rowley's Glitz and Glamour Opal. The trouble with needlepoint, when I am working on a sampler, and in this case, that sampler is Sarah Brazier, is that when a needlepoint comes along, I just want to work on the needlepoint.
Yeah.
So we have Debbie, so I'm jockeying back and forth between Sarah Brazier and Debbie Rowley's Glitz and Glamour Opal.
That's funny because I'm actually doing the same thing. So when I'm not traveling, I'm going from the Sarah Brazier to Debbie Rowley's Black Magic.
Oh, there we go. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This opal thing is a nice little challenge, but what's most interesting is I think Debbie combed the earth looking for all of the pale, faint blue, almost white, not really white threads, and then all the difficult threads. So it's been a fun, and I'm not complaining. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. But it's an interesting exercise, and I'm now putting together a small Jessicas that are maybe size of a quarter, maybe a little smaller, nickel, that have that netted Rainbow Gallery, that netted thread.
Neon rays.
Yeah, only this is one that has a metallic thread fiber woven through it.
Oh.
And I don't remember the name of it. And, again, preparation, I'd have it sitting right in front of me and could tell you exactly the number and everything, but I didn't do that. So, so you make a double cross stitch, and then you stitch a Jessica around it, and there's a bunch of them.
Yes, that I have several of those in Black Magic, except that they're about 3 inches in diameter.
Oh, see, these are small. Yeah. So it's a fun challenge. So I'm working on that. Worked on that last night, and then tonight it's going to be Sarah Brazier, because that monstrous thing I leave laying on my work table in all of its 36-inch rod glory.
Oh my God!
So work on that tonight. But the Debbie Rowley thing, and I've got a bunch of trips coming up, like a bunch, and so Debbie Rowley will be with me along the way. Yep, fun, good challenge, boy. She doesn't let you get bored, I tell you.
No. It's a ton of challenge, and I'm doing actually the background stitches, which are kind of fun. Actually, I thought they would be kind of a slog, and they're really not. I'm really enjoying them. There's all these kinds of zigzag stitches and just all these fill stitches that are really kind of nice. So that's been kind of good. And then there's only one section that I'm going to rip out, and there's 2 sections where you actually have to cut fiber away, cut ground cloth away. One that you cut the entire, like an entire square away, and then weave it together with a Krynic thread. And then another one where you cut most of it away, and then you actually, so if you can imagine, you cut all the horizontal threads away and pull them out, and then you cut most of the vertical threads away, but leave a few distributed fairly evenly, and then you wrap each of those in one color. But here's the thing, okay? So lesson learned, you don't wrap them too tightly, because it looks very nice when you wrap them very tightly when they're by themselves. But then the next step is you actually bind them together to make almost X's. And the way that you do that is that you run a needle up through, if you imagine them straight, so imagine them all parallel, you run a needle up in the loops that you've made, right? The surrounding loops of thread, and then you come out, and then you jump over to the next one, and you go around a couple times, and then you go up again through those loops. So you basically have to be able to have enough slack in there to thread a needle, but not enough slack where you're showing a lot of the ground cloth, which is black.
Oh, yes, that's right. It's on black. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So there's that whole balance of not too tight but not too loose. So I was going for, I want to make sure that there's no black showing, so I went way too tight, and it was just a nightmare. So, and then I thought of a bunch of different ways that I could get around it without doing it that way, and I think I'm just going to just undo it and redo it a different way. So that may be one of the few things I tear out and redo, because it is strikingly visually not good. And the rest of it is fine. The rest of it is, I'm not going to say that it's perfect, that it matches the chart, perfectly, because it doesn't. There's places where there's a stitch off here or things like that, but there's things that no one would ever know unless they were comparing it to a chart. And so I'm fine with that. But this is something where anyone would look up, or, all right, not everyone, but anyone that was a needle worker would look up and say, that looks kind of messy. So it's worth it to me to kind of try again. And because it's really just wrapping the thread a little bit differently to try to get a better effect. So,
Yeah.
but I will say, Debbie was absolutely right. That piece is really, really difficult. It's worth it. It's completely worth it because it's so different. I can't think of another piece that I've seen designed that is like it because it's so asymmetrical and it's on black, it's asymmetrical. There's none of the things that you see that are sort of common elements. But man, it is a challenge.
Go, Debbie.
No, I'm absolutely impressed.
I can't decide if she has an evil twin or just an evil side. Or are those really one and the same, right?
I don't know. I don't know. And it's part of it is that it's on black and it becomes not even that. I mean, there's just so many challenging
Right.
stitches in it, and the fact that none of it kind of makes sense is not the word. There's no symmetry to it. So it's not like you're looking at one side and looking at the other side so you can check yourself to see if you're right where you're supposed to be, right? You constantly have to be referring back to the chart to see if where you are because that's your only reference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really it's a challenge.
Yeah, that's what I love about her stuff is it's a challenge.
Yeah.
They're beautiful designs, but then I never feel like I'm lost. The instructions are so good that even though you're challenged, it's not like you're left out there hanging.
Nope. And I have to say, I can't imagine stitching this piece with anyone else's instructions other than Debbie's because I've stitched other pieces with other instructions and I would have been a mess because she walks you through each stitch. So now if you've never stitched a Jessica before, she walks you through how to do it. So you could be a complete beginner and do it if you have sort of the stubbornness, if I can use that, and willingness to try to do it. It's just really difficult because there's no ease. There's no, okay, I'm just going to stitch a background. It's going to be fine. Or it's on, 18 count cloth and it's easy. No, none of this is easy. You're struggling to see, everything is difficult about it. I'm not going to lie.
Now, how are you doing the black? Are you putting something white on the floor or on your lap? Or how are you doing that? Sometimes
it's just really bright light that I use a little bit obliquely.
Okay.
It depends. Really good magnification and sometimes something a little bit light underneath. That's really it. I tried using a light underneath and that just became more annoying. And in this case, it doesn't. The cloth is not a high enough thread count where it matters that much. So the holes are large enough that you can find them.
Yeah.
It's more a matter of finding the chart and making sure you're where you're supposed to be on the chart.
Yeah.
Because it's not a small piece either. It's quite large considering the thread count. So and it's got a lot of things going on. So it's a challenge.
There we go. There's Debbie right there. Good stuff. Mm-hmm. All the time. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. Band samplers. Now, last night I posted the sampler is Bathya circa 1680. It's a Nicola Parkman Hands Across the Sea sampler. Reversible band sampler. Absolutely gorgeous. So last night I posted a video that we did at Sassy Jack's when we were there with Nicola, a tour of the band sampler. And if you're subscribed to us, you got an email, and if not, go to wetalkfiber.com to see it, because it is, wow, it's really impressive. Mm-hmm. And the history behind it is even more impressive, because I won't tell the whole story, but it's one of those that was stolen by the Nazis in the war when they were stealing artwork, and it was stored away. And so the original is in gorgeous shape, and there's a link on the page for the sampler. There's a link where Joy Jarrett has a video, and she shows the original and explains the history behind it. And so you can see that. And then we had this video tour with Nicola, and it's just a gorgeous sampler. Oh, just gorgeous. And the only place, and I'm probably not completely right on this, but the only place you can tell, or at least I can tell, and that's because Nicola showed me, that you're on the back side, is there are a bunch of acorns. And whatever stitch it is that makes up the cup of the acorn is one of those that does not show on the back side. So when you flip it over where the cup would be for the acorns, there is no thread. But it's equally beautiful. And we show that in the video, in addition to all the other things. But the rest of it is all stitched reversibly, and I tried. I couldn't find where she began and ended threads.
Yeah,
it's tough. I tried. I couldn't find them. So, and she just gave me that look, that Nicola look, like, yeah. So anyway, so that video is available to watch. And I bring that up because if you're interested in that, Nicola is doing classes coming up. She's at Fobles in the UK, November 3 to 4. That one's sold out. And then November 5 and 6, they're 2-day classes, so you have to sign up for 2 days. There's some spaces available. And then next year, May 30, 31, June 1 and 2, and June 3 and 4, she's at Sassy Jack's. 3 2-day classes with Bathya. And Margaret and I are talking about going to be at one of them. Haven't talked to you about it, but Margaret and I are talking about going. And there's space available for all 3 of those. And then a day off, and then Nicola will be at the Attic in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona, June 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 for 2 classes. And there's spaces available there. So there's spaces available for all of her stops in the States. But I talked to Kim Young yesterday, and she didn't say how many, but I got a feeling that if you want in on it, you better hurry. Yeah. And I don't know what the prices are. Call the shops and get in on the deal. But so in the States, 5 classes, 3 in North Carolina and 2 in Arizona for this Bathya sampler. And if you're wondering whether you'd be interested, I'm sure watching this video that we did will answer that question, because it's just gorgeous. It really is beautiful. And got some nice history, great colors, the whole bit. So check that out if you're interested, and watch the video. And then as far as I know, this is not a limited edition, so this chart will be available. I don't know when she's going to start selling it, but it will be available for anyone to buy. But to take the classes and have Nicola show you how to do that stuff, the reversible stuff in particular, would be a real treat. So.
Yeah, that's when the pin stitch and things like that. And I think those things carry over to other things, because I know even with the needlepoint things, I'm finding myself, instead of flipping pieces over, especially if I'm, working on a large piece that's in a frame, when I end a thread, I'm thinking, I don't want to flip this over.
Right.
How can I end it without flipping it? So, it starts getting your mind thinking about, perhaps it's just laziness. How can I end this thread without having to turn the entire piece? Because especially if you're locked into a frame that isn't particularly easy to flip, like a Millennium frame, it really behooves you to think about, can I do it blindly, first of all? Because sometimes you can. Sometimes you can feel your way to run your thread underneath to do it that way. But if you can pin stitch something, it's worth trying to do, I think.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah. Faster, too. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, with like Rainbow Gallery, things like it's not going to work. There's a lot of things that aren't going to work, but then there's other things that will work very well. So I think the lessons and the learnings that you get from the reproduction samplers and from learning to stitch in ways that are invisible on the back. And it's not reproduction samplers, because remember, those samplers are stitched for the purpose of teaching young girls how to stitch invisibly so that things can be reversible. So basically, you're learning how to stitch something that you can't see the end either way, right? So I think it's worth thinking about the learnings that you can pick up from those skills.
Yeah.
And using them the same way that those young girls did. And so when they learned to pin stitch, it was so that they could stitch something that you couldn't see the end. Now, okay, can we use that pin stitch, or can we use something similar so that we don't have to flip a piece while we're working on it, and so that our backs are neater?
Yep.
It's worth thinking about. I don't know that there's an answer all the time. Sometimes there's not going to be, but it's worth, when you're at the end of your thread, to think about, is there a way that I can end this that I don't have to flip it?
Yep. Yeah, and that's when it comes to beginning and ending threads. Yeah, it's worth working on, because there are several ways to begin and end threads, and it just makes you. Yeah, it's more efficient if nothing else.
Yeah.
And I'm loving the trick that we talked about a couple weeks ago, threading up a bunch of needles, especially if you're using the same color. Threading up a bunch of needles at once, and then when you finish one, you just pick one up and go again. And little things, especially with big samplers like Sarah Brazier, little things like that save you a couple minutes here and there. Boy, that adds up over time in a big way.
Yeah, and just, it keeps your rhythm going too,
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So there we have it. Check out that video. And if you're interested and can make it to one of these classes, well worth the time. A lot of fun. You'll learn a lot. You learn a lot more than just how to stitch, too. You learn a lot of history from Nicola. So last week we talked about the Dovo scissors with the red handle. And the Sharpening Doc has an idea for how to fix that problem. And we didn't know what the problem was, and he didn't know either. He got back to me, and he said he really didn't know what the problem was. Chili Hollow Needlework. Jane. Oh, man. I can't believe I forgot her name.
Woods.
Yes, her. That Jane. Yes.
Oh,
she wrote.
Goodness.
Oh, man. That's embarrassing. She wrote and said that there was actually a thread on Needlepoint Nation that they had to take down for, whatever. That the scissors, the finish was coming off, and that several people, that the finish had gotten on the threads, and one lady had a lot of fabric ruined by these scissors. So it's more than, it's pretty serious if that's what's in fact happening. So the Sharpening Doc, Harold Gable, as we mentioned last week, for the cost of $12 just for insurance and shipping, he thinks he has a solution, and he'd like to give it a try. So if you have any of those red Dovo scissors that are the finish is coming off, ship them to him. The Sharpening Doc, link on the page for this podcast, and let him have a run at it. And he said, no cost to you other than shipping, and he wants to take a try. So I think it's as much experiment as anything. But if the finish is coming off and ruining threads and canvases, what have you got to lose but to send it to him and see if he can fix it for you?
Sure.
So, and apparently the Dovo people, part of the problem is the Dovo people have not been real responsive apparently. So this is an out for that if you have those scissors. And then while you're at it, send a couple other pair to the Sharpening Doc, and he'll fix them. He'll make them sharp.
It's so worth it. It's that little delight of actually having a scissor that just snips nicely.
Yes.
It's a quality of life issue.
Yeah.
No, truly it is. If it's a small investment that you can make, that actually, instead of fighting through a pair of scissors that doesn't work, and I speak from the position of spending most of my life having to use whatever scissors I had available, which could have been my son's preschool scissors, to I don't have any scissors around, so I'm just going to tear it with my teeth or rip it, you know, to now I have a pair of scissors that's always sharp. It's worth it if you have a little bit of money to send your scissors in to get them sharpened. Each time you use those scissors and everything is neat and it's not frayed, it's worth it. Those are those little tiny quality of life things that make things just a tiny bit nicer.
Okay.
And you deserve that.
Well, yeah, well, don't we all? I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A couple of things I pulled off of the Facebook groups. One, Dawn Guppy Green, Stitch Mania. I was tempted to write and ask how that name is, but I'm not going to. She is, what she says, I'm trying hard to advance. Now, I struggle with that. I'm not sure it's advance. From stitching on aida to even weave, but I'm really having a hard time. Anyone else have this? Any advice for these old eyes? So, is it really advancing from aida to a linen?
I don't think so. Okay, so I think I know what she means. And it's not so much that it's advancing, and because you're thinking of advancing in terms of that aida is a lower class, easier, not as skilled cloth to stitch on, and that even weave is a, more advanced, fancier, you're a better stitcher cloth.
Yeah, and see, I don't know, that's the common perception, and I don't think
Correct.
I don't think that flies.
It's not, and I agree. I think aida is just more available, and so it's just more people stitch on it because they can get it, and they don't know that even weave is available because they've never seen it before, right? So for as far as tips and tricks to working on even weave, as a fellow blind person, I can speak to this a little bit. Yes, there are definitely things you can do. First of all, tremendous light. So getting a round ring light is absolutely key. The one that I have is a floor stand light. The one that you have, it was a clip-on light, and either one, you absolutely need bright light, and the quality of the light matters. So LEDs are the way to go because they don't cast heat. You don't want it to get hot because then your hands are miserable and your piece is miserable. And there's plenty of LED lights around available that are good. You want to make sure that your magnifying lens that's inside of your ring is going to be large enough that you can actually work with, and that it's going to magnify enough that you can see through. And it's easy to clean. That's another thing. So keep one of those microfiber rags nearby so that you can clean it easily. The other tip that I would add, and this sounds like a silly thing, but it's not. If you stitch in a room with other people, it is worth trying to craft some sort of light guard. So this is going to sound completely silly, but bear with me till the end and you'll understand. When I am stitching, my canvas or whatever fabric that I'm working on tends to be at a little bit of an angle to me. I'm not flat horizontal. It's a little bit tipped up, right? So that means that my magnifying lens is also going to be tipped at that angle. So if the person I happen to be sitting in the room with, if we're sitting watching TV, my light is now shining directly in their eyeballs. That is highly unpleasant, as was illustrated to me by someone who said, "You need to sit over here and see what it's like." So I did that. So what you might want to do is and I'm sure there's much fancier ways to do this, but something as simple as a thin piece of cardboard or paper or anything taped on the outside of it, just as a little bit of a guard. Just so the other people aren't being blinded by your light, is just a nice, courteous thing to do.
Yep.
As far as that even weave,
well, I want to go back to the light thing because I think that is so key. Now, you referred to the light that I have that is a clip-on that I travel with, and that has, I think, 4 LEDs and uses 3 AAAs, and I clip that right onto the stretcher bars or whatever when I travel, and that's very handy. But if you're going to be stitching at home, to have one like Christine and I both have, a floor stand. Mine's like a 2x magnifier, large magnifier with LEDs all the way around.
Yep.
It's, to me, I don't care what thread count your fabric is. Having that magnifier and those lights right there to stitch through, I use it for everything anymore.
I do too.
It makes your stitching so much better because you can see the little nuances that throw stitches off and make them look a little wonky. You can see that with the magnifier and fix it. And while you're stitching, I think that's, when it comes to equipment, to have a magnifier with LED lights around the magnifier is just absolute gold, because it's so easy on your eyes. You can see, you can feel the texture, all the things that you really want. And I think I know I stitch faster and I stitch better because I bought that thing.
Yeah. So definitely that. And for me, I don't think that my vision is good enough to see that level of detail that you're talking about, but to be able to see at all is enough. If you need to add more light, do so, because as you age, part of the thing that our eyes do is that our eyeballs don't take in the same amount of light as young eyeballs do. So if you have to use the light and then add another light on top of it, do so. So add as much light as you can. Just blaze light on that, but use LED because it'll be cool. It won't heat up your work.
Oh, and that's so key, because you can sit there with your hands underneath that light and your head over it for hours, and there's no heat, and that is just so key. It's so nice. Yeah, it's worth getting a good magnifier light stand. It really is.
Yeah, and mine wasn't expensive. It's a floor stand light. You fill the floor, like, it's got a big base that you fill with water or stones or whatever it is you want to fill with, and a big metal sort of stand part, and then a neck arm, and then you just swing the arm over and you just put it over. I think I got it on Amazon or something like that, but I'm sure that we could use the Arlene Joanne's tricks. They probably have some that are like that. I don't know that I've seen floor stands. They tend to have more of the smaller light ones. I would go for Amazon, the most lights you can have, the strongest magnification you have. So the other thing is that the difference between Aida and even weave is that the word even weave is a complete lie. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be completely wrong. When I stitch on, and this was something I had to learn as well, linen, they talk about being an even weave cloth. The threads to me are not even at all, because you get some that are slender and then you get some that are fat. And especially when you describe that cloth as being even weave, you would expect that not to be the case, right?
Well, yeah, you would. And that with others like Lugana and some of the others, it really is an even weave in that the threads, warp and the weft are even. But no, linen, right. Linen is, it tends to average out, but yeah, linen, sometimes you'll get one of those that's hair, no thicker than a hair. And
yes. Yeah. So, right. So even if it's not even, it's not you. That's just how it is. So you have to just take that into account. And what I will do often is when I'm counting something, if where I'm counting doesn't make any sense because the thread is really fat or really thin, I'll just drop down 10 stitches or so and count there, because sometimes because the thread itself, because it's flax, right? It's not it's not even. So the thickness of the thread varies as it travels through the fabric. So if you just drop down 10 threads or so, you'll find that at that point, it might actually be more even, and it might be easier to count. So for me, what I find is that if I drop down a little bit, that space might be easier to count, and then I can find my way back up again. So those are things that I use to navigate supposedly even weave that is not very even. And because truly I can't see, right? I have a terrible problem. The other thing that I will find, and this may not work for everyone, is because I am both nearsighted and farsighted. So I've always been nearsighted in that I couldn't see distances since I was a young child. And then as I've aged, my near vision has gone completely because I now have old lady eyes. I can't see close up. But what I can do is when I take off my glasses, then if I hold something really close to my face, it's clear. So it's worth trying taking off your glasses if you wear them and getting up really close to the magnifier and seeing if that helps. And I wouldn't recommend it as a strategy for all of your stitching for the entire time because it becomes very painful because you're straining your neck to get your face really close to the magnifier, and then you look really weird too, and your family makes fun of you.
Right.
But for those times where things don't make any sense, or you're trying to read a chart that you really need to count something very tiny, that's a good trick because it sort of tricks your eye and everything gets bigger. Cheaters are really good. So if you have to put, you can get, like I have stitching glasses that I got from the optometrist that they actually made the lower end of the progressive lens even more corrective so that they magnify better. You can drop another lens over that. So you can buy like a headset that has a magnifier over that will go in front of your glasses. So I have one that has a light. The light is quite frankly not very helpful because it's not bright enough, but the lens, it comes in different diopters. So you can get a +1, a +2, up to about a +5. And those are just different levels of magnification. And those just drop right in front of your glasses. So if you need better magnification, those are also helpful and they're portable.
Yep.
So that's another thing you can do. So for me, working with even weave over aida, to me, you can get away with a lot of things because you can count with your needle. So you can depend on texture and depend on your sense of touch a lot more. And you can get away with not depending on your eyes. When you move to even weave cloth, you can't do that as well because the cloth is too smooth. So you really have to look. So I found all of these sort of compensatory techniques to be able to see. So it really becomes about getting one good magnifier and just getting as much light as you can on there and just accepting the fact that it's not always going to be even, and sometimes you're going to have to struggle a little bit, and that's okay.
Yeah, and when it comes to the cloth, it's still a grid. It's still a grid. It's X's if you're doing cross stitch, and whether it's over 2 threads or over 1 thread, you're still making an X in a square, and it's just a matter of stitching in the square hole, in the holes. The holes are still there. They just look different. But to me, the key is just all those things. Any magnification and light are just that's the key to me. But I think it is for now that I have that light stand. I think it is for any stitching. As much light and magnification as you can get, it is worth it. Absolutely worth it. Yep. All right, that's gonna be enough.
Yep.
That's gonna be enough. Sunday, Freda Murfin, Freda's Fancy Stitching. Fantastic conversation with a really talented charted canvas needlepoint designer. Really enjoyed that conversation with Freda. So that's Sunday. And thanks for listening. And we'll be back, Sunday and then next Wednesday, both. Yes.
Take care.